They stood on the same stage, Tom Cruise, the king of stunts, and Keanu Reeves, the silent legend. Cameras rolled. The world watched. Tom cracked jokes, stole the spotlight, and tried to make Keanu look small. But then, Keanu looked him in the eye, and said just 3 words that left the entire room stunned, and ended the debate for good. You won't believe what happened next, and by the end of this video, you'll see why Keanu doesn't need to win, because he already has. The sun dipped low over Los Angeles, casting golden light across the skyline as luxury cars pulled up to the private studio. This wasn't just another Hollywood gathering. It was the annual Roundtable Night, a behind-closed-doors event where the industry's biggest actors came together to talk, unfiltered, on camera. Only a few were invited. Even fewer made headlines. But this year, 2 names guaranteed it would go viral. Tom Cruise and Keanu Reeves. The moment their names appeared on the guest list, the media went into a frenzy. Commentators called it the face-off no one expected, but everyone wanted. 2 icons, 2 philosophies, 1 stage. Tom, known for leaping off helicopters and flashing $1 million smile. Keanu, the mysterious force who rarely spoke but left every room shaken with his quiet presence. Inside the studio, technicians adjusted lighting while producers whispered nervously into headsets. The air crackled with anticipation. Crew members peeked around corners just to catch a glimpse. Tom arrived first. He stepped out of a black SUV, sunglasses on, grin wide. He waved to everyone like they were lifelong friends. A photographer clicked a picture. Tom pointed at the camera and said, "Make sure you get my good side, which is all of them." Laughter followed him inside. He walked into the green room like it belonged to him. Assistants hurried to refill his espresso. He talked fast, moved faster. People hung on his every word. In the corner of the same room, Keanu sat alone. No assistant. No buzz. Dressed in his usual dark jeans and boots, sipping green tea. He wasn't scrolling his phone or scanning the room. Just watching. Observing. Tom finally noticed him. "Keanu," Tom called out, walking over, arms open. "The man. The myth. The mystery. You ready to shake things up tonight?" Keanu looked up and smiled faintly. "We'll see," he replied softly. Tom chuckled, gave him a pat on the back, then turned to charm the makeup crew. Keanu returned to his tea. Minutes later, the producer walked in and clapped. "All right, everyone. Let's make history." The lights dimmed. The stage was set. The guests were ushered to their seats in a perfect semicircle, cameras positioned like snipers. Each chair had a nameplate. Tom and Keanu sat side by side. The moderator leaned into the mic. "Tonight, we bring together some of the greatest actors of our time. Let's talk passion. Let's talk truth. Let's talk legacy." Tom leaned forward, eyes alive. Keanu sat back, face unreadable. The war hadn't started. Not yet. But everyone in the room could feel it. This wasn't just a conversation. This was going to be something else. Something unforgettable. The moderator didn't waste time. She turned to Tom first. "Tom, you've redefined action cinema. You've risked your life, literally. Hanging from planes, diving from buildings. Why?" Tom grinned. "Because it's real. I believe the audience deserves authenticity. When they see me jump, they know it's not a stunt double. It's me. No green screens. Just guts." Applause erupted. Tom soaked it in, flashing his signature smile. "That's legacy," he continued. "Pushing the limits. Giving everything you've got for your craft." Then the moderator turned to Keanu. "And what about you? What drives you?" Keanu sat quietly for a second, as if translating the question in his mind. "I try to serve the story," he said, voice calm and slow. "And protect the people I care about. Not every story needs noise." The room was still. His words didn't ask for applause. But they landed heavily. Tom chuckled. "That's beautiful. But come on, Keanu, haven't you ever wanted to, jump out of a plane? Set yourself on fire for a scene." A ripple of laughter followed. Even the moderator smiled awkwardly. Keanu raised an eyebrow, still calm. There are many ways to suffer for a story. Not all of them require flames. Tom leaned back, amused. Sure. But let's be real. Audiences today, they want spectacle. They want to see you fly, fall, bleed. Keanu nodded slowly. Some of us bleed inside. The room went silent again. Tom wasn't used to silence. He thrived on energy, momentum, applause. But Keanu's quiet presence was starting to bend the atmosphere. The moderator tried to lighten the mood. Tom, you once said your greatest fear is being ordinary. Keanu, do you have a fear like that? Keanu looked thoughtful. I fear losing what makes us human. Empathy, kindness, gratitude. If I ever stop feeling those things, I don't want to be in this business anymore. The moderator blinked. That's powerful. Tom interrupted, laughing. Well, I just fear running out of adrenaline. Again, a few chuckles. But something was shifting. Tom was performing. Keanu was revealing. And the audience could feel the difference. Backstage, one of the producers whispered, "This wasn't supposed to be emotional." Another one replied, "Keanu didn't get the memo." As the conversation moved on, the contrast deepened. Tom filled every moment with sound and movement. Keanu filled the silence with meaning. And somewhere in between, the crowd stopped watching a panel and started witnessing a quiet kind of war. Not a battle of insults, but of presence, of who could truly hold the room without trying. And for the first time that night, Tom Cruise realized something he wasn't used to feeling. He wasn't winning. The formal panel ended with applause, laughter, and flashes of cameras. But the real moments were yet to come. As guests filtered into the adjoining dining room for the private dinner, the energy shifted. Long tables with crystal glasses and gold-plated name cards sparkled under the soft lighting. Waiters moved like shadows, pouring wine and serving hors d'oeuvres. The room buzzed with deals, compliments, and carefully rehearsed charm. Tom Cruise entered first. He owned the room instantly, laughing loudly, shaking hands, snapping photos with guests who couldn't believe they were breathing the same air as him. He stood at the head of the table, recounting a story about holding onto the side of an airplane during a stunt. "It wasn't even scary," Tom said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "You just trust your instincts and go." People clapped. He loved the sound. Then Keanu walked in. No announcement. No rush. Just a quiet presence that seemed to soak into the walls. He greeted the waitstaff first, thanking each one with eye contact. Then he found his seat, not at the center, not at the head, but halfway down the table. He nodded politely to those nearby. No stories, no spotlight. Tom noticed. "Hey, Keanu," he called out, raising a glass. "Still playing the man of mystery?" Keanu looked up, smiled faintly. "Just enjoying the silence." Tom laughed. "You've got to teach me that trick one day." Dinner began. As the courses arrived, Tom stayed on stage, even though there was no stage. He spoke in fast rhythms, told stories of near-death filming moments, mimicked action scenes with his fork and knife. People laughed. He thrived. But something strange happened. Each time Keanu spoke, and he rarely did, the room grew still. Not out of obligation, but curiosity. He wasn't trying to entertain. He was simply present. When someone next to him asked about his childhood, he shared a story about his mother working 3 jobs and the silence in their small apartment. When asked about his fame, he replied, "It's not who I am. Just something that follows me around." People leaned in. Even those who had laughed the loudest at Tom's jokes began to turn toward Keanu, curious, then quiet. The shift wasn't sudden. It was subtle, like the change in air before a storm. Tom noticed. He clinked his glass. "Here's to doing your own stunts. And to actors who know how to take risks, not just sit there and drink tea." Laughter broke out again. Forced. Uneven. Keanu raised his glass gently. To kindness, the hardest stunt of all. The laughter faded. Even the waiters paused. Tom put his glass down, smiling, but something behind his eyes flickered. He was trying to lead the room. Keanu wasn't trying at all. And somehow, That made all the difference. It happened just before dessert. A young waitress, barely in her 20s, carried a tray of red wine toward the head of the table. Her hands trembled slightly. This wasn't just any dinner, it was Hollywood royalty. Every step felt like walking on a tightrope. She approached Tom Cruise's seat. The tray wobbled. And then, a glass tipped. Deep red wine splashed across Tom's crisp white shirt. The room froze. The waitress gasped, panic flooding her face. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." Tom stood up, slow but sharp, brushing at his shirt. His smile vanished. "Careful," he said tightly. "Do you know how much this shirt costs?" The girl's lips parted, trying to speak, but nothing came out. Her eyes were already glassy. Tom raised his hands, half laughing, half sighing. "This isn't some cheap gig. It's a professional dinner. You can't just spill things like this." Guests looked away. Some shifted in their seats. No one wanted to make it worse. Except one person did move. Keanu. He stood up from the middle of the table and walked quietly to the scene. Without a word, he took a napkin from the table and gently handed it to the girl. Then, kneeling slightly, he dabbed at the wine on Tom's sleeve. "It's just cloth," he said softly. Everyone watched. The waitress's eyes met Keanu's. For a moment, the chaos disappeared. "Thank you," she whispered. Keanu smiled kindly. "It happens to all of us. First day." She nodded. He leaned in. "You're doing great." Tom stood still, caught between anger and embarrassment. He looked around, realizing the room wasn't with him anymore. Someone at the far end of the table muttered, "That's what grace looks like." The tension shattered like glass. The waitress gave a grateful nod and disappeared to the back room, tears threatening to spill. Keanu walked back to his seat as if nothing had happened. The room slowly returned to motion, but something had changed. A producer whispered to a colleague, "Did you see that? That's going viral." Tom poured himself a drink, trying to re-enter the rhythm. But the spotlight had shifted. Not because Keanu took it, but because he didn't want it. Later, as coffee was served, a young actor leaned toward Keanu. "Why did you help her like that?" Keanu looked at him, almost surprised by the question. "Because one mistake shouldn't define someone," he said. "Especially when they're still learning." Across the table, Tom stared into his untouched dessert, silent. For the first time all evening, he wasn't the one being watched. And somewhere deep inside, he knew, that moment wasn't about wine. It was about the difference between being admired and being respected. The next morning, both actors were scheduled for a brief joint press appearance. Nothing too intense, just a few questions, some photo ops, and a final wrap-up for what the media had dubbed the most powerful roundtable in years. Reporters were buzzing before they even arrived. The video clip of Keanu helping the waitress had already gone viral overnight. Some called him the kindest man in Hollywood. Others compared the quiet grace to the loud frustration Tom had displayed. But officially, the press wasn't supposed to ask about that. Unofficially, it was all anyone wanted to talk about. Tom walked in wearing a tailored navy suit, his posture perfect, jaw tight. His smile was there, but thinner than usual. Controlled. Keanu arrived seconds later, in black jeans and a simple blazer, holding a coffee he'd picked up himself from the corner shop. They sat beside each other at the interview table. The first few questions were standard. What inspired you to join the roundtable this year? What does legacy mean to each of you? Tom spoke with polish. Legacy is about excellence. Passion. Doing the impossible. I live to challenge limits. Keanu nodded respectfully, then answered. Legacy, to me, is about leaving something behind that helps others feel less alone. The room grew still. The moderator smiled. Well said. But then came the question everyone had been waiting for. You both have massive global fan bases, the reporter said. But if we're honest, people love to compare you. So, let's settle it. Who do you think is the greater Hollywood icon, Tom Cruise or Keanu Reeves? Tom sat back in his chair, eyes gleaming slightly. Well, he said, I've done more stunts, more franchises, and probably more box office. A few chuckles in the room. He turned to Keanu. "What do you think?" Keanu looked down, thoughtful. Then he slowly turned his head toward Tom. His voice was low, calm. "Tom is great." Everyone stopped. The reporter raised an eyebrow. "That's your answer?" Keanu nodded. "Tom is great. He's done things no one else has dared to do. He changed the game. And I respect that." Tom blinked. The reporter leaned in. "But don't you want to be the best?" Keanu gave a soft half-smile. "Being the best doesn't matter to me. Being kind does. If we both served our audiences with honesty, we both win." Tom looked at him. For a brief second, the walls around his usual confidence cracked. There was something behind his eyes. Maybe confusion. Maybe reflection. Because in that moment, Keanu wasn't competing. He was lifting. And those 3 words, "Tom is great," didn't sound like surrender. They sounded like freedom. Keanu didn't need to outshine anyone. He just needed to be real. And that was enough to change everything. The interview clip spread like wildfire. In a world obsessed with conflict, with competition, with one-upmanship, Keanu's quiet humility felt like a breath of fresh air. Within hours, social media exploded. People weren't just quoting his 3 words, "Tom is great," they were dissecting them, reposting them, comparing them to decades of Hollywood rivalry, where actors battled silently for status and screen time. But Keanu had ended that game before it even began. He didn't play. He just chose peace. For days, talk shows debated it. Reaction videos popped up from every corner of YouTube. Analysts discussed Keanu's emotional intelligence. Fans shared personal stories about him, moments when he had stopped for them, helped them, seen them. Meanwhile, Tom Cruise remained quiet. He didn't post anything. No comments, no interviews. His team released a short statement praising the roundtable and calling Keanu a class act. But something about the silence felt different. Not calculated. Reflective. According to someone close to Tom, he had rewatched the clip a dozen times. Not the parts where he was talking, but the part where Keanu looked directly at him and said those 3 words. Not sarcastically. Not with defiance. Just truth. Tom had spent his entire life chasing greatness. Keanu had just let it be. And somehow, the world responded to that more powerfully than all the stunts, explosions, and adrenaline combined. A week later, in a quiet studio in Vancouver, Keanu was back on set filming a small indie project. No headlines. No press. Just him, a small crew, and a director who had always dreamed of working with him. Between takes, a crew member approached him shyly. "Hey, I don't mean to bother you, but that interview with Tom? That really hit me. You could have crushed him with words, but you didn't." Keanu looked up and smiled softly. "It wasn't about crushing anyone," he said. "It never is. But, weren't you mad? The jokes, the tension, the comparison." Keanu sipped his coffee and shrugged. "People act from where they are. Some from fear. Some from ego. Some from pain. My job is to meet them with understanding, not more noise." The crew member nodded slowly. "You're different." Keanu chuckled. "I'm just tired of the game." Later that night, in a quiet restaurant on the edge of the city, Keanu dined alone. A waitress brought his meal and paused, nervously. "Sorry, are you really Keanu Reeves?" He looked up. "Most days." She smiled. "I saw that video. You're the kind of person I hope my son becomes." Keanu looked at her kindly. "Then he already has a great start. He has you." As she walked away, she blinked back tears. Across the country, in a different kind of setting, Tom Cruise stood on the balcony of his mansion, staring out at the city lights. He wasn't angry. Just quiet. He thought about that dinner, the wine spill, the way Keanu had handled it. He remembered how easily the room had shifted without a single shout or boast. And he wondered when was the last time he'd just let go. Later that evening, he typed a message on his phone. "Hey. Just wanted to say, you handled that with class. I've been thinking a lot. Thank you." He hit send. Keanu's reply came an hour later. Always here. No spotlight needed. And that was it. No speech. No post. Just two men, one used to the roar of applause, the other to the silence between, finding, perhaps, a strange and quiet respect. In a world that celebrates the loudest voices, it was Keanu's silence that echoed the longest. Because sometimes, the strongest message isn't a grand statement. It's restraint. Sometimes, real power isn't in the spotlight. It's in choosing not to step into it. And sometimes, the three simplest words, "Tom is great," are enough to end a debate the world was desperate to keep alive. Not because they declared a winner, but because they reminded us that greatness isn't about winning at all. It's about who you are, when no one is clapping. If this story moved you, even just for a moment, share it. Not for the clicks. Not for the views. But because the world needs more reminders that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers. In a time where pride fights for attention, be the voice of quiet respect. Be the one who lifts others, even when no one's watching. And if you believe that real greatness lives in humility, in kindness, in restraint, then like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters. Because sometimes, the softest voice leaves the deepest echo.